Buenas noches. Good evening, everyone. My name is Liz Fernandez. I am the Job Fair Administrator. I am very excited to welcome you to this webinar, whether you are joining us in person, thank you so much, or you are viewing this at your own leisure. Either way, please note that you can certainly reach out to jobfair@nysais.org at any point on your journey to be able to get questions asked, answered, and any additional support that you might need. This evening, we have three panelists who work at three different schools and have been on three different journeys. They will share a little bit about their experiences and also provide insight into the overview of the hiring process, where we anticipate it is in 2024 for the 2024-25 school year, knowing that there may be some changes, there may be some edits. It's not a one size fits all. At least it'll give you a general overview. I also want to let you know that the NYSAIS Job Fair to promote diversity to be held on Saturday, February 24th from 10 to 1 for candidates in schools will feature over 92 schools from 5 different states, Eastern Seaboard and California. So we are excited about that. We invite you to come with an open mind, also knowing that information that is shared this evening may vary slightly or significantly depending on region and the position at a respective school. So this is really meant to be a general overview. The next thing I'd like to share is that this explanation or overview is really meant to create a context for you after the job fair itself. So let me set the stage. The job fair, you arrive as a candidate anytime between 9:15 and I would say 9:30. You will quickly pick up your badge, check your coat, go downstairs. If you need to register on site, we advise you to do so ahead of time. But if you need to register on site, please bring your resume on a flash drive, clearly labeled which resume you would like to upload. The whole process takes 5 minutes if you invest the time ahead to clearly label which resume you would like to upload. And then you'll go downstairs into the theater where I will give you a sense of what are the materials in your folder, what does the day look like, what to expect, etc. That half hour, 45-minute time frame is really critical for candidates because we're going to tell you the latest piece of information. If a school moved, if a school's not here, whatever you need to know to best prepare. Then after that, you will go upstairs and begin interfacing and networking with school representatives from over 90 schools. So that'll be great for you to have that exposure. After that, there will be opportunity for follow-up. And that follow-up primarily comes from you. It may come from a school representative. Now we're going to transition into having our candidates, once they're engaging in that process, really need to keep track of things. And we believe that informing you ahead of time of what to expect from a process is one of the best ways that you will be successful in the process. And so for that reason, we are hosting this webinar this evening, overview of the hiring process. We have 3 panelists. I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves, starting with Susan, then Abby, and then Julie. Please let us know where you work, the history of your time within schools and as educators, how long, what type of school is your place of employment, etc. And if you are responsible for hiring a particular division or community, or if you're in a crossover role, teaching, administrative, etc., all of the above is important as part of the introduction. And then from there, we will dive right in. Thank you.
Great. Hi, everybody. My name is Susan Yao, she, hers, and I co-founded a school called the Vermont Village School. And so I started as a 5th grade middle school history teacher in a charter school. And for licensure reasons, I ended up not intentionally in independent schools in New York City. And I really loved having the autonomy to teach how and what I wanted to teach And so my career since then has always been in independent schools. I was a teacher for several years, and then I got my leadership degree from Bank Street and began to move into administrative roles, taking on committees, becoming a curriculum coordinator. And then I was the middle school head at Friends Academy in Massachusetts for a few years. And I had always had this idea to start a school. And so a couple of years ago, I made the leap to start a school. We just opened this year with 11 students. Our mission is to reimagine school as a liberatory space for people of color. In terms of hiring, I've been part of committees that have hired senior administration, such as development and CFO, as well as classroom teachers, substitute teachers, and then on nonprofit boards, I've been a little bit involved in hiring as well. And I'm really happy to be here.
Hi, everyone. My name is Abby Rojas, and I have a pretty extensive career starting in public school. And I actually got my degree in special education, and I started in public school. I was a teacher for many years, 15 total between New York and Florida. And then when I came back to New York, I started working at Columbia Grammar and Prep, which this year marks my 23rd year there, and I've had a really long career there. I started as a learning specialist, and then I moved on to being the coordinator of the Learning Resource Center. And then I was the assistant director in the middle school. And currently I am the director in the grammar school. So I've kind of seen it all, done it all. I've done a lot of hiring. Right now, my position allows me to hire from, looking at interns to associates to teaching assistants to resource teachers. I hire classroom teachers, head teachers. I hire science teachers. So there's a lot of hiring going on, as well as administrative assistants and also administrative teams and administrators as well. I hired recently my assistant director this year, so and that worked out well. And I'm happy to be here as well. My school, Columbia Grammar and Prep, has been around for, wow, really long time, 260 years, I think. And it's one of those schools that has a real balance of academics and also liberal arts and sciences. We value arts, we value drama and music. And it's a really exciting place. So I'm looking forward to seeing you because we are actually hosting the fair, and I will be there. Welcome.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Dr. Julie Torres. I am the academic dean at the Calhoun School. And that's a school that serves from pre-K to 12th grade. So kids can go all the way through to high school. I work across all the divisions, and so I am involved in hiring in some aspect in lower school and middle school and upper school. It is my 5th year at Calhoun. It's also my 5th year in independent school. So prior to being at Calhoun, I did 25 years in public schools. And so I started in the New York City public school system. And then I was a teacher, I was an administrator. I did lots of PD, teacher training. And then went out to a district in Long Island, still public school, and was in charge of like a cohort of students and lots of different departments. So I've been involved in hiring in different settings with different rules. And so it's always good to know sort of like what the actual setting is and what the rules are. But I am currently involved in hiring for whatever the needs are of the school, whether it's a classroom teacher, whether it's an administrative position, whether it's a support position. And happy to be with you this evening.
Thank you all. So as you can see, we have a wealth and breadth of experience represented on this panel. I would love to know what you think hiring is going to look like this year. What are you anticipating? And to be clear with everyone who's listening, hiring has already started. That we know, depending on the nature of the position, depending on the vacancy. We also know that many of our schools have not sent out their contracts for colleagues in the community, whether they're teaching or administrative or support. So depending on the school, that is a little more fluid than you get your contract today and then you have to return it tomorrow kind of thing. So that's an important factor because there are going to be positions that have already been posted and the process has begun. And then there are going to be positions that are going to be posted at the job fair and even after the job fair. So to keep that in mind, I'm curious if you can each speak to how your school is approaching the 2024 hiring season. Let's start with for teaching positions specifically. We know that COVID and the pandemic created for some an adjustment. So there was a lot of virtual and even hybrid. Is that still at play? Is it 100% in person? Talk a little bit about what the structure looks like. I'll ask Abby, Julie, and then Susan.
Well, it's interesting, and thank you for that question, because this year we're actually going through planning for realignment next year. And what that means is we are a pre-K to 12 school. Lower school was this year, it's pre-K to 4. Next year it'll be pre-K to 5. So what that meant was that there was going to be a shift in some of the personnel and the teaching positions in 5th grade, as well as 6th, 7th, and 8th grade for the middle school next year, and then 9 through 12 in the prep school. So we're doing a lot of shifting, and what we're realizing is that we're going to need to hire quite a few classroom teachers. It begins with the virtual process. Our HR director, the director sit down with the HR director and we come up with a job description for what our needs are. And then the job is posted. We meet, we talk about a hiring team, and usually it would be a teacher, it would be the curriculum coordinator, grade level coordinators in the grammar school, and also my assistant director and director after. I have a team, so it's a long process before it gets to me, but that's virtual and in person. And I think we've really moved towards more in person because we want people to come in, we want people to experience what the culture is like. We want to get them to meet people and understand just what the school community is. So it's actually really good for us for people to start coming in. So that's basically what we're doing now. So this realignment has really caused us to kind of look at what our needs are, and we do have positions that are already posted. We have several teaching positions as well as other positions in each division. So that's been our process. We also we're looking at having Zoom meetings first. I will say that those Zoom meetings are about 20, 25 minutes. And then we're really moving towards in-person coming in. And we're trying not to have people come in several times. So what we're doing is we might set up 2 or 3 interviews in one day. We might have the demo lesson another day, and then hopefully move on to director and then beyond, which would be our head of school or assistant head of school.
Yeah, thanks for that question, Liz, because we're right in the middle of it right now. And so, and as you mentioned, we've already been collecting resumes. Sometimes we collect resumes even if we're not sure if a position is going to be open. I think there's always that sense of you're going to anticipate. And so, better be ready than to scramble at the last minute. So it is important, I think, sometimes even if a school doesn't have a particular position posted, if that really is a school or a community you want to be part of, to still make a connection, because you never actually know where things are going to end after contracts get sent out and once people make decisions about their plans for the following year. There are some folks who have shared their plans for next year, and so we are aware of some openings, and I think we will just become aware of more openings afterwards. We always create committees that will be focused on a particular position. So the committees are always fluid because they will have someone from that division, from that particular discipline. And so they're different committees depending on what the positions are. We tend to start with a virtual quick screening interview. And so, and those do tend to be short. I would say maybe about half an hour. It's usually someone from the committee or at most two people from the committee. We tend to record them so that everyone else could see it at some future date so that the entire committee doesn't have to be present for those for the actual interview, but there is an expectation that we all, see it and come together and then make decisions about who we invite for in-person, days that we have done in person pretty much as soon as schools reopened. And so we haven't done any virtual, demo lessons. Everything has been come into the building, get a sense of the place of who we are, and, get a sense of like whether this is a good fit, not just on our end, but also, on the candidates. And if it's a place in the community that they want to be a part of. We plan a full day, and so meetings with lots of folks and meeting with, a group of teachers, meetings with, our director of diversity, equity, inclusion, our associate head of school, our human resources manager, whoever the division director, is for that position. There's always a wrap up at the end with the actual committee to talk, to process. I might be missing someone, but it is a full day with the demo lesson somewhere in between, with lunch somewhere in between. And again, just to really get a sense for if it winds up being, a good match and on both ends.
Susan, anything that you have to add? And when it, let me hone in a little bit because both Julie and Abby have said that the initial conversation is often virtual.
Mhm.
And it's short. So if you could speak to sort of briefly what to expect during that, what are some tips and suggestions for that, in addition to anything you also want to add, that would be really helpful.
Sure, sure. I think that ties in well with the trend that I was going to share, which is when COVID first happened, we're seeing high turnover everywhere. The great resignation nationally in a number of industries. And I saw this openness in independent schools to considering more candidates from less traditional backgrounds. And I feel that hiring is getting more competitive again, and maybe we're going back to more traditional ways of reviewing candidates. And so in that first round interview, if you make it to that first round, I think it's important to convey what you are looking for, and that's the chance for the school to be asking, who could we really see here? Of all the people who applied, who is sending out generic cover letters to 20 schools, and who really could have a place in our community here? And I think the more you can share about your journey, you would be surprised how many resumes I read where I can't tell if this person is looking to move or even looking for a specific position. It can be hard to get a sense of where someone is on their journey in their entire career, big picture, and how our school and this role might fit into that. And so I think the first round interview is a great time for both the candidate and the school to try and feel that out, because usually only 3 people are invited for that full day in-person interview.
Great suggestions. Yeah, Julie.
I did want to add something just because Susan mentioned cover letters. And I understand that the, newest generation of teachers and just newest generation entering the workforce do not believe in cover letters. And I cannot stress upon you enough how important that is in your initial materials that are sent to a school, because depending on the position, there could be tons of resumes to go through. And it's nice to get a sense of who the person is through that written cover letter. Because sometimes just to narrow things down, we might just do the whole, let's just look at who sent the cover letter and the resume versus looking at, 50, 70 resumes for one position. So since you mentioned the cover letter, I did want to highlight, like, it still is an important part of the application process.
Great suggestion and a great reminder. The aspect of the process that we have a webinar that we did last year that still stands. So I just want to let everybody know resume do's and don'ts, please. It'll probably be the most useful 55 minutes that you'll have. Please view that and take a look at your resume and make sure that a lot of the tips and strategies that we offered are reflected in your document so that you can present the most attractive body of your professional experience possible to the people who are taking a few seconds, and it's really a few seconds to peruse your resume and then, determine if you're going to get that second look or if you're going to be passed over. And certainly that cover letter, as was mentioned, is really important. The other thing I will say, just for everyone to note, is if you would like some assistance in having your resume reviewed, I am available. This is part of the service that we offer. I'm available to be able to review, so please don't hesitate to reach out to jobfair@nysais.org to be able to have that kind of support. I welcome the opportunity to give you some feedback on your resume in advance of the job fair, which means you need to do it between now and Friday, the Friday before the job fair. So the Friday before President's Day weekend, excuse me, because the database of candidates that have pre-registered goes live to the schools early the week of the job fair. So if you want to get some feedback, do so in advance so that you have the time to make the changes. Moving forward, and thank you all for your feedback. I would love for you to talk about what are some of the things that candidates should avoid during a process, whether in person or virtual. We already know that submitting a cover letter is going to be important. What are some of the other things that you think a candidate should really avoid during the process at any phase or stage? Julie first, Susan, and then Abby.
I think when folks are invited in, especially if they're coming in to do a demo lesson, that includes, thinking through like what you're bringing, if you have to make copies. And so I think it's okay to speak to the school about, will there be time for that? Will you be able to do that? I do think that there is a difference between having a list of demands, what you need, and sort of collaborating with folks about what could make your, what could ease your visit and how the school can support you during your visit. And so I would say to be thoughtful and also have not present problems, but maybe be more pose things more as questions or as wonderings and have possible solutions to things that you are anticipating as a possible problem.
So a concrete example before, just to synthesize that for our listening audience. If you're not sure that you're going to be able to get photocopies done, then come prepared with your photocopies. If you have technology as part of it, have a backup so that if your demo lesson is contingent upon technology, have a backup just in case, because technology could go awry. If you're having students write something, prepare that they may not have something to write with. So maybe have some pencils or pens or something in your bag that you can distribute. You might want to ask a question about if the room has desks, so that if you're going to write, then it's much easier. There are some classrooms that are set up a little bit differently because they're very flexible, because they're multi-use spaces. So you're going to want to know some of that information in advance. You're also going to want to know a little bit about the age of the students that you're going to be working with as well. So I just wanted to give some concrete examples to what Julie was speaking to. Please continue.
I would think about how you show up to your interviews and how you plan to show up long term to your job, because and really don't be afraid to be authentic. Because if you show up and you're trying to be who you think you're supposed to be, then that's what that school will expect when you arrive to start working there. And I think as schools are having real conversations around authenticity and assimilation and belonging, that more and more schools really want you to be your authentic self. And so that would be my main piece of advice.
I just wanted to go back to what you were saying about preparing the lesson. One of the things that impresses me the most is when a candidate will reach out to the interviewer and say, I could really use some information about what the students are learning, depending on what it is. Like, let's say it's a 6th grade history class you're going to teach. You want to know where they are maybe in their unit so you can prepare and then have a lesson that is relevant. And also all those technical things that need to happen, but as well as just touching base with either the coordinator or the department chair is really a good idea, because it means that you're doing some homework to prepare for this lesson. The other thing I would say is, like, virtually, that's a very short time, whether it's a 20 or 30-minute Zoom call, just to get to know you, whether it's one of the folks on the committee or it's the director of HR. It's really important to make sure that and this may sound like, you might think this is a no-brainer, but we've pretty much probably seen it all between all 4 of us online. Make sure that you're in a quiet space. Make sure that there are few distractions. Make sure that you dress professionally. With COVID, we all knew that from the top up, we needed to be professional. It's okay from the bottom down, but the top up needs to be professional. And I think that that's something that a lot of folks forget. You want to make sure that you're dressed as if you were coming into the school, as well as those distractions, whether it's, the cat or the dog. Like, you want to make sure that all of those things, like, you're on point, because that's going to be your 20 minutes to make sure that you make an impression. So that virtual time is going to be really important. When you come in, I would say, and this is for virtual as well, do some research on the school. If you really want to work somewhere, you want to know, you want to go to that website, you want to read up on what's happening as far as their curriculum is concerned, what their history is. You want to have something that says to that interviewer, you have done some homework, that you really want to be at this place and you want to know this school. So you've gone to, and it could be just a website, and you could say, hey, this is what I saw on your website and I'm really interested, or, it connects to my philosophy. Those are the types of things that we want to hear.
Great, great, clear suggestions, everyone. Let's talk about that famous demo lesson. So what are you looking for? What is an observer seeking to determine during a teaching demo lesson? And for some candidates, they may be asked to submit a lesson plan draft in advance. Others may not. I would not encourage people to read into either, other than to be prepared and to also know that it's all part of the process. So Abby, if you could start, and then Julie, and then Susan, if you have something to add, and then we'll move on to the next question.
Sure. I think the 4 main points that I'm looking for in a demo lesson is, I want to see someone who knows how to teach. I want to know your instructional skills. Very important, classroom management. How you go in, how you greet the kids, how you respond to either bad behavior or disruptions. Very, very important. Differentiation. We really want to see whether or not you are able to reach those students who may not be paying attention, or who may, you feel like they're not listening to the lesson. So you want to differentiate, you want to bring in things that are exciting, but not too exciting, because you want to make sure that you're managing the class. So it's a real balance. And also assessment and feedback. Are the students understanding what you've taught? And do you have some feedback for them at the end? One thing that really, for me, is extremely important is how you end your lesson. Because if you're not wrapping it up in a summary, you're not touching base with those students to see if they have gotten it, then that's a real time where you've lost, a real opportunity to show that you have, from A to Z, done your homework on your lesson. Planning is really important, and we can see that right away. If you haven't planned your lesson, then we'll definitely know. And also, like I said, I think it's really important to get a feel for what you should be teaching in that demo lesson. And then also an important thing is if you can even get a little bit of an understanding of who those students are, who the learners are that you're teaching in that 40-minute period.
Yeah, I was going to say a lot of the same things. If you can connect with the classroom teacher, so you can ask some questions about who are the students in the class and have some expectation of who the kids are and what their needs would be, so you can better prepare. That would be great. I often think about like planning, preparation, personality. Like that's what I'm looking for. So connecting with students, like immediate connection with students, being able to maintain that like level of interest and engagement from students. I definitely want to see some like command of the content, especially when we're looking at middle and upper school classes that tend to be really specialized. I agree with the wrap up and like a strong start. So a nice hook, and then definitely leaving some time at the end for a wrap up. And I would say always expect for something to go wrong and be able to show your flexibility, like flex the parts of you that can be flexible, not just with kids, but with technology, with anything. Like expect really the unexpected, because that's what teaching day to day is, right? Being able to think on your feet and, adjust as needed. And so that would be things that I look for when I see a demo lesson.
I agree with everything that has been said, and I also want to let people know, especially if you have not taught in independent schools before, one of the big secrets is that schools are not all prioritizing instructional quality. And so I have seen wild variations in what administrators are looking for or hiring committees are looking for when they observe a demo lesson. And so some might be looking at confidence, some might really be understanding the lesson and the flow. Some might be looking at connection to students and what feedback students give after your lesson. And so it really can vary. I one tip that I'll add to what has been said already is that get a sense of what the students are used to and try to plan a lesson that could work or be flexible if the students are not used to whatever activity or content you're presenting. And so if they are not used to doing turn and talks and they don't have a, go-to partner for a turn and talk, that may not be the most successful demo lesson. And usually, as Julie said, the classroom teacher can tell you that ahead of time. Or one time I did a demo lesson where I thought they were in the middle of a World War II unit, and it turned out they were not at all. Even doing the unit, I was told.
Talk about being flexible. One of the things that I would also like to add is ask the question, where are students coming from and what's the class or experience activity after your demo class? Because if students are coming from lunch or some other less formally structured time, it's going to take a few minutes for them to settle. And depending on the age of the students, that's going to be, I think, a relevant data point to consider. And if they're right before lunch at any age, right before lunch is also an important data point to know, because they're going to be focused on getting up and exiting. The other thing that I wanted to say is student engagement. Many of our schools really value, and many of the observers, our colleague observers, are valuing the experience of watching an adult educator engage with students and like capturing that moment. And that often it's that engagement moment that becomes a priority over the I have to cover every single thing that I laid out on the lesson plan. Don't forego that student learning and engagement moment just because you think you have to dot all the I's and cross all the T's and finish the lesson plan. It's going to go fast. Connecting with a student with an idea, taking that extra second is going to be an important part of your ability to demonstrate what does it mean to be an educator in this school at this moment for this group of students. I'm gonna shift our panel to reflect a little bit and respond to some questions about the typical structure for an admin interview, starting with, is there a virtual component at the beginning? And then how should someone prepare for that virtual admin interview? And then I'll come back around and ask questions about more of the in-person and what does that look like? So as you're responding, think core and key suggestions. And if what you wanted to contribute has already been said, then, let me know and we'll move on to that next part. So Susan, let's ask you to kick us off. Thinking about that admin interview, what does the typical structure look like? And then we'll check in with Julie and Abby and see who'd like to add.
Sure. I think like the classroom teacher interview, the school and the candidate are trying to figure out, could this person really be here? And should they be in one of the 3 in-person interviews? The difference that I see in administrator interviews is that there often is a real call. This year, there's a specific task, whether it's bringing stability to the school or leading a certain type of institutional change. There usually is a more specific type of person that they need for that role in that moment. And the sooner that you are able to figure out what that is and whether or not that is the task for you, the quicker you will find out if it's a fit and the school will figure out if it's a fit. And so you're probably going to talk a lot more about the strategic direction of the school. That research that Abby mentioned is very important for your first administrator interview. And being able to see the big picture of how your role fits in.
Abby, Julie, either of you want to add?
I would just say that I probably don't, those virtual first initial Zooms are, really short, 15, 20 minutes. And I'm just trying to get a feel for, some background experience and maybe just, current responsibilities.
Yeah, I'll be short and just add that I think concrete examples that exemplify what you're actually trying to highlight about yourself and your leadership style are really important. So having ready in your mind a couple of like stories and like examples and things you've done so that you can share those things and like make it concrete about things that you've done and you've been successful doing and ways that you can contribute and be part of a new team.
I want to remind everyone that for an administrative position, if ever a cover letter has been fundamental and a must, this is definitely a non-negotiable moment. And so the importance of lifting some of the language from the position description and incorporating and highlighting some of the previous experience that you have had to really highlight how you have a set of either transferable skills or complementary skills or exact skills, if you will, is going to be an important part of the experience. So that cover letter is really important. Speaking to the mission of the school, all of our schools have mission that guides the institution and ideally should guide the teaching, the learning, and the lived experience of everyone within the school community. So you write that cover letter, you submit your resume, you're super excited. Please just submit what is requested. Do not submit more than is requested. Some schools will say, please submit cover letter, resume or CV, and 5 references that will not be contacted unless and until you are notified. Moving on. Some schools will ask for resume, CV, and a cover letter, of course, and then an educational philosophy and references. Sometimes they will only ask for 2 things, the CV, resume, and the cover letter. So pay attention to what is being requested and how they are requesting you to submit the information. That's important. The interview process begins with how you submit your materials. So that's one piece I wanted to include. And then as you are receiving that information and processing it and sending it, your materials are being reviewed. You've been invited to a conversation. Again, all things apply. Quiet space. Consider what your background looks like. Consider the time of day. Make sure you have water next to you. All of those things that are very helpful for you to be at your best for that initial conversation. And then you get called in. You are, congratulations, a finalist. You are likely one of 3, for some reason, is the magic number. It's not just a song. That is often the number that schools work with. And you've now been invited in. So take us through, what does an admin structure look like for a day? With whom are candidates likely meeting? What are some of the questions that they're likely going to be asked? Who's going to be in the space? Of course, it depends on the position, but give us a sense, to some extent. So, Abby, Julie, and Susan.
So for admins, we, one of the things that I like to do is I really do like for them to tour the school and meet as many people as possible. I like them to get a feel for the experience in the school and then come to me and talk about what that felt like. That's really important for me to get a feel for what they're seeing and how they're feeling on that day. So I usually just start with a tour, which is a little different probably than others, but I just like to get a feel for their experience. The other thing that's really important is I really do like to prepare some questions regarding situations that they have been in. So I want to know how they're dealing with difficult parents. I want to know, like tell me when, this happened and how did you resolve it and what did you learn from it? Those are the types of things that administrators have to do on a daily basis. How do you prioritize when, you have 100 emails to go through, you have 2 parents who are knocking on your door and your phone is ringing? What does that look like? I do that on a daily basis. And administrative folks, like they're so important. My administrative team, like I want them to meet them so that they can feel, have a sense of that process as well, because I think it's really important. And also, I ask about technical skills, cultural fit, those are the types of things that I like to, talk about and share. And I think, I don't know if it was you, Susan, that said, sharing stories. Like, I think that that's really important because I like to have a conversation. I want to know who you are. And it's not just, answering a bunch of questions. It's really getting to know you as a person as well.
Yeah, admin interviews when you're called back could be a day, it could be more than a day. There is a marathon feel to it, with like a full packed day of meet as many people as possible, meet lots of small groups. Again, it depends on the position, what the groups are going to be. So it might be like the student support team. It might be groups of parents, some interaction always with students, whether it's, going in to like do an activity with students, because lots of independent schools do ask administrators to also teach. So maybe not teach a lesson, but some interaction with students to see how that would go. Lots of individual meetings with folks on the team. So it winds up being sometimes like quick, but like fast moving, move on to the next thing. I do agree there's lots more conversations than necessarily an interview at that point. So the questions that you have ready are probably as important as the questions that you're going to be asked. So really knowing the school, really having a sense of like what's important to you and what you want to ask about the school and the culture and the supports and like what Susan said, like what are you actually looking for? Like what is beyond what the job description says? Like what is the need that you need filled with a person in this role? And so I do want to say that because it's a marathon, to really think about how you take care of yourself on those days. So whether it's like throw in, an extra, like energy bar in your bag, make sure you have like a water bottle, like bring your chapstick, like whatever you need to make sure that you're taken care of, like just make sure that you also take care of yourself, make sure that you ask for a break when you need a break, like, and that because it is a marathon and that is really what it's like to be an administrator, that 100 things are coming at you in a day and you do 100 things in a day. And so part of it is creating that for you. And in that space, you do have to take care of yourself the same way you would take care of yourself on a daily basis. So I did want to share that as something to think about as you prepare for these full day or sometimes day and a half callbacks.
They said it all.
Um, the one of the things that I always say is, and I really appreciate just how specific the suggestions were. The self-care piece is really critical. Um, taking a moment, using the restroom, taking a moment to really center yourself in between, whatever that means for you. Doing a little bit of research in advance of your in-person visit. You will get a schedule of who you're meeting with. Maybe go to the website, take a look at who some of these individuals are, what positions do they have. Sometimes schools will give little bios on who people are, and some of the programs maybe come up with a couple of questions um, that might be important for you to know, to really demonstrate interest and to connect with someone, because as Abby said, you really do want to have a conversation. You don't really want it to be ask, answer, ask, answer, ask, answer throughout. And if you do some research in advance, I think that facilitates it much, much quicker. And speaking of questions to ask, what are some questions that whether, that you can think of, teaching, administration, if you think one should really be a teaching type question, then note that in your response, panelists. If they're just good general questions to ask during an independent school interview process, then just pose those. And if you think they're specific to admin, then certainly distinguish those. But Susan, let's start with you. What are you thinking are some key and essential questions? And then I'll go to Julie and Abby.
This is for the candidate to ask the school.
Yes.
I love getting to know the people who are interviewing me and asking, why do you love the school? How long have you been here? And trying to understand what their journey is. And if parents are interviewing you, ask about their children. And I think a lot can come from that.
One of the questions that I think is a good question for either teachers or administrators, but in particular teachers, is to ask about ways that the school supports PD opportunities and what are some PD opportunities that are available for teachers, especially if you are new to the independent school. There are, different things you can plug into. And so knowing what the school values and if schools are prepared to just offer that from jump is important to know and ask. And I think just getting a sense of ways that you can be supported without saying, hey, how would you support me if I'm struggling? Like so don't say that. Just say, what kind of professional development opportunities do you offer, or what kind of professional opportunities are available for faculty to take part of.
Along those lines, before you go, Abby, you could ask a question. So independent schools are full of acronyms and shortcuts. So PD is obviously professional development, but I just wanted to highlight. So thank you, Julie, for bringing that up. You could ask a question, how does the school and the leadership team or the grade level team or the department or whatever, depending on the role, the administrative team, how do you support and welcome new colleagues into the community? Is there a mentorship program? Are you paired with someone? Questions along those lines demonstrate an interest. Also speak to what Julie was saying around wanting to make sure that and can identify that there are supports in place. every single person who has entered an independent school has had some challenge at some point, and someone has had their back, or a community or a group of people have really rallied to support somebody. Because I do think fundamentally there's a real desire to see people be very successful. Hiring takes time. It's an investment of time. It's an investment of resources. And so it's much better to really make a strong investment in the candidate pool that is being brought in, so that whoever is appointed will ultimately stay and grow within, than it is to just keep creating a revolving door, which is both exhausting and not sustainable because it's not cost effective. So I just wanted to insert that little piece. Abby, what are your thoughts?
So, I mean, one of the things that I really think is important is to dig deep into the role. Ask what the expectations are, what are the goals, like, what are you really thinking about this role is important to know. And then also, I always like when people ask, are there opportunities for collaboration? How do teams, build community and relationships? Is there a support system, obviously, and what that onboarding process looks like? I think that's really important.
Excellent. And for those of you that are thinking about the summer before you begin work, or throughout the year, there are teaching positions, there are administrative positions, and then there are seasonal positions that might also be of interest to you. For example, summer camps, many of our schools have summer camp opportunities, and they are often looking for camp counselors. And if you have an interest and want to pursue that as a possibility, it's additional compensation. It's an opportunity for you to understand the school, the community. Often there are colleagues that you will likely work with. There are many families and students that are already enrolled at the school who are part of the summer camp experience. Sometimes it's a thematic camp. So if you're a science or STEM teacher, there may be thematic camps that might be particularly of interest as well. Also, if you are a coach, there are often coaching opportunities to pursue during the school year. And this is true not just in middle and upper school grades. If you are interested in coaching and you have joined a school community in the lower school, ask during your interview if there are coaching opportunities. And as a lower school teacher, is that possible for you? Or as an upper school teacher, could you teach in the middle school, or after school club opportunities? Because there are multiple ways to continue to find ways to be part of the school community beyond, if you're interested, the teaching and administrative roles. There are definitely those seasonal spaces. As we near the end of our time together, I want to give our panelists an opportunity to just really think about what key advice, what's like a really important piece of advice that you want our listening audience to really hear and really take in. And I'm just going to leave it open whenever you are ready to share. What's an important piece of advice that you think is important for candidates to hear, for either or both?
I would say, I think that being yourself is really important. And if you're feeling uncomfortable or you're feeling nervous, it's okay to say that, because we've all been in that position. We've all had that first interview. We've all, I didn't start in independent schools, so it was a whole new world for me. I didn't know anything about independent schools. It's okay to say I'm a little nervous, or I've never been in an independent school before. This is new for me. I think, being a little vulnerable is okay.
Yeah, I was gonna say being comfortable is super important. So, you should be dressed not just sharp, but also comfortable, so that you can kind of make it through the day. And to really, it is a two-way street. So it is as much the school, like having you go through this interview process, and you interviewing the school, and you getting a sense of that, if that is in fact the school and community that you want to be a part of, because that is what makes independent schools, each school unique. It's their mission, their culture. And so you need to go in also asking questions about whether they are right for you.
Yeah, along similar lines, I think sometimes as a candidate, you can get lost in the cover letters and resumes, and you really deserve to find somewhere where you can thrive and grow. And so I hope that you have high standards and that you can find that in your search.
Fantastic advice.
Mhm.
Abby, Julie, Susan, thank you so very much for your time, for sharing your wisdom with our listening audience, for just providing specific examples of ways to help prepare for the 2024 hiring season. One thing that I want to say is we started with hiring season is already upon us. There are multiple ways to find out what positions are open in advance of the job fair. So if you are so curious, please visit either a school website, take a look at a school website. If you're not sure, look at the NYSAIS website, nysais.org, and look at schools, and then you'll see the job board where our schools, member schools can post positions. That's a very important way for you to take a look at what positions are out there. And there are other platforms where our schools post positions that they are anticipating vacant or that are already vacant and are encouraging people to apply to. And then I would also say that when you think about the hiring process, ask if people are offering the opportunity to be helpful. For instance, if you need any assistance, jobfair@nysais.org. Please do
Mhm.
reach out. I am the person behind that email, Liz Fernandez, that's me.
Mhm.
There is a reason why we are offering this kind of support, because we know that there is a culture to independent schools, which means there is a language that is used, and we want to make sure that people are ready and prepared so that it is much more comfortable and much more seamless, so that you can truly focus on, is this the kind of place where I can thrive, as was said. That's a really key piece of this entire experience, because it is an investment of your time as you consider independent schools in general as a potential place for you to spend several years, or as some of our panelists have said, in excess of 20 plus years in some cases. I want to thank you all for listening. I want to remind you, Saturday, February 24th, from 10 to 1 at Columbia Grammar and Preparatory School, or Columbia Grammar and Prep. We will be at the job fair. We are always grateful to our friends at CGPS for hosting us. I also want to remind candidates, if you have not registered for the job fair, registration is very simple. Make sure that you go to register, and that you absolutely upload the most current resume that is typo free, please, so that it is ready, and that you do this by Friday, February 16th, so that if you are interested in getting some feedback on your resume, you also indicate that you'd like some feedback, and we can schedule time. Resumes will go live with school representatives as early as Monday, February 19th, so which is 5 days in advance of the job fair. And one closing thing, many schools, as soon as they get access to the database, may reach out to candidates via email and by phone to be able to connect with you in advance of the job fair. So please pay attention, and also make sure that your voicemail, if you have a voicemail, is sounds professional, and that you check it regularly. I think that's an important detail. And finally, if you do not get a phone call or you do not get an email a few days before the job fair, do not read into that. It is no indication of your strength as an educator. It is possibly schools haven't gotten around to it. There's professional development days for many of our schools on the Tuesday after President's Day. People may be planning. There's lots of reasons why. I guarantee you, after the job fair on Saturday the 24th, many, many, many candidates experience an avalanche of follow-up as a result. And they also engage in follow-up. So very important. Thank you all so much. Thank you, panelists. Everyone, have a great afternoon, and thank you for listening. A great evening. Bye-bye.
Yes, bye.
Bye.